Welcome, beautiful people of all ages, shapes, and colors, to another episode of the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, where we encourage you to stick to the basics. I'm one of your co-hosts, CV, aka TV on basketball, alongside my co-host, Jay, aka Knockdown Jay. We're back, man.
TV, long time no see. Oh,
I
my
know.
bad.
Hey, if you wonder where we've been, I mean, that kind of all you need to know. Jay got into some little complications, so we decided to take a break off the pod to let him recover. But we're back.
Yeah,
We're
man.
back. And honestly, Jay, I think we're back at the right time.
Man, look, basketball is in full fledged. Me and TV was just talking about before the podcast kicked up. The WNBA playoffs are around the corner. NBA training camp is in only a couple of weeks. The NBA season tips off at mid-October. TV, it's a good time to be a basketball fan. NFL fans, please take your step to the left for us real quick.
Because this is like where, like, you know, the basketball fans finally get hyped. You're gonna finally hear the preview episodes. You're gonna hear like award predictions, all of that. This is where the NBA talk starts to really ramp up. If you've been missing NBA content, this is where stuff is gonna really take off. And we're the same. I mean, we already started planning a bunch of the episodes like forward, man, and we have a lot of great stuff coming for you. But for today's episode, very much WNBA related, because we are doing our WNBA playoff predictions. We're going to get back into the flow of things, but 7 of the teams have already clinched their spot, and we're going to try and predict how each of the series are going to go for the first round, and that's going to be the majority of today's episode. So if you're ready for that, be sure to lock in, and we're going to get into this episode very shortly, but we do have to plug our other platforms. Before we start this episode, remember to follow our individual accounts at TV on Basketball, at The Routine Jumper. Jay said before the episode, there's going to be content coming soon to The Routine Jumper, so you want to be following that before it finally launches. But in terms of the Hit Your Free Throws pod, make sure to follow us for the best daily NBA content on TikTok and Instagram. We're going to be getting vlogs soon. You know, when the NBA season comes around, I'm going to be back. So be on the lookout for that. We have the Daily NBA Picks Challenge, and we're going to be a lot more prepared this year for it. So it's going to be super crazy. We got the clips. We got a bunch of NBA news stuff. So the TikTok and Instagram is going to get busy during the season. I'm going to tell you that right here, right now. In terms of the podcast network, Spotify and Apple, make sure you show your support there. Subscribe, leave a review, all that good stuff. And in terms of to YouTube, remember to like, share, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you will not miss an episode. Jay, are you ready to talk basketball, man? It's been a minute.
Man, it feels good to be back on the pod, TV. Let's get it, man.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, quick thoughts before we go into this. I recently went to the DeMar DeRozan thing, and I felt like this needed a short section on the pod, because, you know, he's the mascot here for the Hit Your Free Throws podcast. I just want to tell people to go check out the book Above the Noise. You know how much he is much of a mental health advocate, DeMar DeRozan is, and he finally put into a book forwarded by Greg Popovich, by the way. He had a big impact on this book as well. He talked a lot about that and the thing that I was sitting in on the book Q&A. That was an awesome experience. Talked about a lot of things. Talked about his time here in Toronto. He said he wants to retire as a Toronto Raptor. Sorry, Kings fans, he's already planning his exit. But also, and Jay, I want to get your quick thoughts on this on the pod.
Yeah.
He talked about DeMar DeRozan really quick, and her impact on that glorious playing game between my Raptors and the Bulls. He said he was not going to stop her. He said she apparently does this at her own games as well. Just your quick thoughts on that.
Hey, man, look, she will forever be a Chicago Bulls legend, man. There's not too many fans that can be as loud as DR was, man. At the end of the day, huge situation for that. And looking forward to DeMar DeRozan in Sacramento, man. They're playing for much bigger things than Chicago is right now. All Bulls bias aside, you know, I had my bias for about 2 years where I said that DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine could be one of the best tandems in the NBA. And for a short period of time, they showed real promise as one of the better, you know, guard forward tandems. And, you know, now he has a chance to go link up with another young point guard in De'Aaron Fox for a team that is really trying to play for something. I've been high on the Kings the last 2 years. I don't know if this is necessarily the needle mover, but I definitely think that, especially for what they paid to get DeMar DeRozan, this is an upgrade that is going to show I think it's going to show benefits during the season. I think DeMar DeRozan is one of those pickups for Sacramento that's going to be more of a, maybe their record isn't better, but if they make the postseason, they're a bigger threat in a 7-game series against some of the better teams in the Western Conference. And that's the real step forward Sacramento wants to take. And hey, maybe they get some Diarra chance in the meantime.
100%. I'm excited to see how this goes. Again, check out this book, man. I'm starting to read it right now. It's going to be super dope. Again, it's called Above the Noise. It is out right now. Jay, let's get to these WNBA playoffs predictions, man.
Yeah, man.
7 teams have secured their spot. We got the Liberty, we got the Lynx, we have the Connecticut Sun, the Aces, the Seattle Storm, Indiana Fever, and the Phoenix Mercury. There's like one spot that's like tied up right now by like 3 teams in the Chicago Sky, Washington Mystics, and Atlanta Dream. Just for continuity's sake on this predictions, we're gonna like keep it as the Washington Mystics. Honestly, they were gonna be my prediction to make it in anyway. They've won 7 of their last 10 games. Kind of like on a hotter streak right now than the other 2, especially since Chicago was missing Angel Reese. So I'm gonna keep them at number 8. So that's what we're gonna do with these predictions. And then you know how the WNBA playoffs go: 1-8, 2-7, all that good stuff. Jay, should we start at the top? Should we start with the 1-8 matchup?
Ooh, 1-8 matchup looking real lopsided, TV. I ain't gonna hold you, man.
I know, bro. The New York Liberty taking on the Washington Mystics.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this could have been a little bit different. Maybe we would have, said a little bit different if Elena Delle Donne was still a member of this Mystics team from last year. But unfortunately, that is not the case. And man, the Liberty have looked just so good. Like they're the ones who, lost in the finals last year. They're coming out this year even looking better, man.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing in an interesting East Coast matchup like this one, man, is just the fact that when you talk about the offense of the Liberty, it just seems like it's going to be really overwhelming. They've been playing strong at a really good time. Obviously, they recently dropped the game to the Minnesota Lynx, but outside of that game, I mean, everything is kind of clicking. Sabrina's playing well. Brianna's been catching her stride offensively all year long. Jonquel Jones, I mean, they're just doing something where offensively, there's only maybe 2 teams in this entire postseason bracket I feel comfortable guarding the New York Liberty over the course of a 3 to 5 game series. And unfortunately, Washington ain't one of them.
I don't think that's I don't think that's a strong take. I mean, because we talked about it early on the season. Freaking the Mystics were like started off the season 0-4. They looked like they were on their way to being one of the worst teams in the league. They picked themselves back up. You got to shout the Mystics for doing that. But against this team, where you have former MVPs, you have Sabrina Ionescu jumping into top 5 MVP discussions, it feels really lopsided. And the fact that the Liberty are one of the deepest teams in the league as well, like it's going to be a Liberty. It's going to be a Liberty victory. I think they sweep them.
I think the biggest thing, too, is I would definitely take them for the sweep. But I think one of the things, especially being a guy that roots for the Washington Mystics as a local, one of the things that I do want to contextualize is the Washington Mystics have been dealing with injury concerns all year. One of their top forwards, Shakira Austin, has been in and out of the lineup consistently, starting from the beginning of the year. And as of recently, she got ruled as shut down for the remainder of the year. Their top rookie, Aaliyah Edwards, has been in and out of the lineup lately. She's been listed more so as doubtful. And actually, she's set not to play in game 1 against the Liberty. So that's already the trajectory that she's on. So if she's not playing in game 1, this could be a series that goes by really quickly in favor of New York. And I think that New York already were the heavy favorites even without these injuries.
Yeah, 100%. They've been, it was the second year of like a Breonna Stewart and everything here. They finally feel like they have like kind of the all around effort there. The all around, game in terms of game, like, having the defense. They're the best 3-point shooting team in the league as well in terms of field goals made. Their offense is just too legit, bro. This offense is just absolutely legit. And it's hard enough to find people that are going to be able to stop him. And the fact that you're looking at the Mystics right now, probably not. But I will say about this matchup, there's going to be some beautiful basketball. These 2 teams are like top 4 in assists for both of them. So at least there's going to be some nice basketball being played out there.
It's going to be a lot of talent. It's just one of those things where I think, again, we were going to obviously talk about MVP at some point in terms of like how everything shakes down. But in terms of the way the league is ranking out right now, I said it earlier, there's just not too many teams I think offensively can hang with / guard New York in a 3 or 5 game series. And Washington is not one of those 2 to 3 teams that I'm picking to do that out of this playoff squad. So it's going to be interesting, but I think New York is going to get by pretty quickly. Like you said, I'm going for a clean sweep as well, even though the homer
100%.
in me wants to give him a game.
Hey, man. Look, mistakes. Congratulations for making out of that little run and keeping yourselves in contention. But it won't be long-lived. We will say that. We're going to move on to the 2-7 matchup now, though. We got the Minnesota Lynx taking on the Phoenix Mercury. You know, the Wiley Ovets, you got the number 2 MVP and Nafisha Collier. Jay, who do you have in this series?
I'm going with Minnesota. I've been trying to tell people all year that I think Minnesota is the sleeping giant that no one wants to pay attention to. I understand all the storylines, whether it's Asia Wilson, shout out to her for finally passing the 1,000 points, only player in WNBA history to do so. Shout out to Caitlin Clark for what she's been able to do. I think she is a legitimate MVP candidate. And as much of an Angel Reese fan as I am, from a statistical output standpoint and the fact that the Indiana Fever are locked into the postseason and were locked in as a postseason team before Angel even went down, let alone now the Chicago Sky bumping themselves kind of out of contention, not necessarily all the way, but like you said, for this podcast, we're going with the Mystics, so that would mean Chicago would miss. Everything points to Caitlin Clark winning Rookie of the Year this year. Shout out to that part of the conversation. Shout out to Angel Reese for what she has contributed to that part of the conversation. The Minnesota Lynx have easily been one of the best teams in the league all year, and they get talked about the least. Kayla McBride has been
6-game winning streak, bro. They're still on a
6-game winning streak. Nafisa Collier, in my book, is the second person in the MVP ladder behind Asia Wilson. Kayla McBride has been shooting the lights out of the ball. They are they are the 6th highest scoring team in the league, which is middle of the pack, but they are the 2nd highest efficiency scoring team in terms of putting the ball in the basket on a consistent basis. And they're one of the teams that tends to be one of the better ones in overall defense, 2nd in steals. I think they're top 5 in defensive rating this year as well. This
number
team,
1. They're number 1 in defensive.
Excuse me, number 1. I said top 5. Give them some. See, put some respect on their name.
Yeah,
they are the number 1 team in defensive rating this year. The Minnesota Lynx, to me, are the sleeping giant no one is talking about because of the fact that there are all these other individual superstar accolades being passed around. And you factor in Nafisa Collier going down with injury right before the Olympics, so it kind of took a little bit of the shine off the team going into the break. But this team has been consistent. They've been good in terms of across the board. They have an MVP candidate, and they are low key my dark horse pick to take down the Aces, who are the defending champions when they get to that point. And the only way they can do that is by getting past this first round matchup, and I think they're gonna do it.
Oh yeah, it's this one I will say will be a bit more competitive than the 1-8 matchup, mostly because the Mercury, they're 2 top stars, obviously on the older side, but they've just been getting it done their entire careers, man. I mean, when you look at Diana Taurasi, when you're looking at Brittany Griner, that matchup's gonna be crazy though. Brittany Griner versus Nafisha Collier in this type of series, it should be definitely something to look in for. I agree with you too, by the way. Collier is my number 2 in the MVP race as well, but I just think that this Lynx team, when you factor in the defense that they have here, and the fact that they're the most efficient 3-point shooting team in the league, with the number 2 MVP candidate, it's hard not to choose them. The thing is, this is different in the NBA. Remember, think about it this way, though. It's not a 7-game series. It's a 3-game series. Do I think that the Mercury can maybe steal a game? Yes. Can they steal one of the games? But in terms of thinking about which team is going to lose 2 out of 3, I don't see the Lynx doing that. They've been too good all year round. They even were pretty solid even without Nafisha Collier. I think they were keeping themselves above water just because of how good their defense has been. But I think that the Mercury will be competitive. I will say that, especially again, we just know what Kalia Cooper can do. We know how big of a star she is. Griner and Taurasi still helping her behind her. But I just think that this Phoenix Mercury team being a bit too on the older side. They're not the best defensively. They're actually in the bottom 3 or 4 defensively. And when you're going up against a high-powered offense with the number 2 MVP candidate, I don't see it. Like, I don't see them winning 2 games over them. Maybe they have a chance at one, but I also think that the Lynx are going to come through with this one.
I think there's 2 X factors for the Phoenix Mercury that we have to pay attention to in terms of in terms of their possibility of flipping the series, where they are a team that is not just seen as a legitimate threat, but as a real pick to win against Minnesota. The 2 people that I think you have to watch on the Phoenix Mercury in a series like this is Kalia Copper, who has been there before, has been a WNBA Finals MVP on a real championship run next to a legend. Next to a legend at that, in Candace Parker. Again, playing next to legends in Brittany Griner and Diana Taurasi. The other one is Sophie Cunningham. Pickup that they kind of it's one of those signings to me that I think her 3-point shooting is going to bring a different element to this team. And I think it's going to be one of those things where she has the chance to have some really scary games. And remember, like you mentioned beforehand, these are 3-game series. You only got to put 2 good games together to move on to the next round. That's a real X factor. But the main person for me, Kalia Copper, is the main player I am watching in this series between Minnesota and Phoenix, because I think that she is an individual game breaker. I think at the guard position, she is a tough player to keep tabs on. She is one of the best scorers in the league, top 5, top 10, if I'm not mistaken, across all scorers in the league right now. She is going to be a player that in this kind of setting is going to be dangerous, even against a top-rated defense like the Minnesota Lynx. She's one of those players that you can't just take your eyes off of just because the rest of the team doesn't necessarily seem like offensively they match up with the Minnesota Lynx. That's a player who breaks molds.
No, she's going to be the one who's going to be able to create her own shot at this series. She's going to be like the one person that, like, especially if it gets close when you're the Phoenix Mercury, you're going to give the ball to Kalia Copper. I mean, like, Diana Taurasi, again, at her older age, maybe something you can't really rely on at this point, but she's still going to be like a wise veteran to try who knows how to win in these sort of situations. But Kalia Copper, they're going to have to ride the back on her. They're going to have to try to ride her coattails to victory. But the Lynx have been just been too solid all year round, and it's going to be it's going to be a potentially good one-on-one matchup between Collier and Kalia Copper in terms of like what they can bring both to the offensive end. But the Lynx team, man, we talked about it. They're very well rounded, and I think that they're going to be able to pull out this win. I'm going to give the Mercury 1 game. I think they could do it, but the Lynx, I think, will win the other 2 games quite comfortably, I will say.
Yeah, like I said, I'm picking Minnesota to play upset alert in the whole championship bracket, and they can only do that by getting past this first round. First off, like I said, shout out to the Mercury for what they got going on this year. And like I said, Kalia Copper, keep your eye out on her. She's the one that I think will strike the most fear in anybody's heart if you're a Minnesota Lynx fan. But like I said, I got to lean with the Lynx until I see something different.
Yeah, 100%. And plus, they got a home court advantage too, so that's going to be she's extremely massive for the Minnesota Lynx. All right, we're going to move on to the 3-6 matchup, and I think this is the one that a lot of people are going to be tuning into. We got the Connecticut Sun versus the Indiana Fever.
Yeah.
Now, me and Jay talked a little bit about this off pod. Remember, the Sun and the Fever matched up, I think, like, what'd you say, 2 out of the first 4?
2 out of the first 3 games were Indiana Fever against the Connecticut Sun. And they were rough. Yeah. Game number 2 was much better. And specifically, Caitlin responded very well to the physicality that she received in the first game and in her second game, overall, to kick off the season. Very chippy, and very specifically, that Dejanay Carrington versus a Caitlin Clark matchup is one to keep an eye on, because it's been a notable storyline throughout the year. And it's one that I think in a 3-game series, it's got to be at the top of the list of things to keep an eye on.
100%. Look, the Sun won the first 3 games, but, the mental edge might be there. The Fever did win the last one. They did win the last one. Now, Caitlin Clark wasn't all world in that one. I mean, she's still great. She's still had 19-5-5, probably the best game that she had versus the Connecticut Sun. But the Fever are hitting at the right time. Jay, I'm gonna throw this back to you. Does the Fever have a chance here?
I definitely think they have a chance. They've been one of the best teams since the break for the Olympics. I actually read something earlier that said that Kelsey Mitchell and Caitlin Clark are ranked number 2 and number 3 in scoring since the break.
Did you
So,
see that last game, by the way, with them like combining for like 60 something points?
and that's a part of it. Like I said, it's not just that they're clicking at the right time. It's that their two best players on the perimeter are both feeding off of each other and playing at a high level. You mix in the fact that Aaliyah Boston is catching her stride. If I'm not mistaken, Aaliyah Boston's top 5 in blocks right now per game.
Yeah.
Their team is picking up. They're one of the best teams in terms of field goal percentage this year. They are one of the better improving teams defensively over the course of the season. This is a team that is catching their stride at a good spot. And that's really big for A, Caitlin Clark's development, but B, for this team. You have to remember, this is a team that's coming off of having the worst record in the league. And now they're a team that the last couple of years, excuse me. And now they've built themselves kind of overnight to an extent into this team that people are viewing as a potential like threat in the postseason. I think this is one of those where Connecticut is built to guard this team, right? Connecticut is one of the best defensive teams in the league.
They're like neck and neck with the Lynx for like best defense in the league.
I was going to say, they're literally one of the best defensive teams in the league. They have some of the best switchable bigs in the league. DeWanna Bonner is still one of the best scoring bigs in the entire WNBA. You can't forget that Alyssa Thomas as an overall orchestrator is always going to be an MVP conversation just out of the mere fact of how she's able to run a basketball team every single year. Connecticut is a fundamentally sound basketball team.
And deep.
Let me tell you the funny thing about this, and I was thinking about this before the podcast, and I wanted to save it for the pod, though. The Connecticut Sun versus the Indiana Fever reminds me of, like, when the Alabama Crimson Tide took on the Johnny Manziel version of Texas A&M.
It's A&M.
It's one of those things where the Connecticut Sun come off as that Alabama team, pre-established, have, players on the team that have went to finals, have won championships, have played deep into the postseason, have real pedigree within the WNBA, right? And then you have the Indiana Fever with this it kid in Caitlin Clark who comes in, and although she is a fundamentally sound basketball player, she has this game-breaking ability that just takes her skill to another level. And although the team and Indiana is good, but we saw the difference between the last 3 years and this year with Caitlin Clark at the helm. There's something special about her and her play style and how unorthodox in comparison to some of the traditional aspects of WNBA we've seen up until now that just make her almost an enigma when trying to guard her on a night-to-night basis. I don't want to go Steph Curry route and stuff like that. We've seen that assimilation with players in the past, and it hasn't played out. Caitlin Clark is one of those, though, that I will say, similar to going back to my Johnny Manziel comparison, all you need is that one game with that crazy performance that'll make people believe. We saw Johnny Manziel put together the craziest game of his life in Tuscaloosa against the Alabama Crimson Tide, and it basically was his coming out party to what eventually became a Heisman winning season. This for the Indiana Fever looks like Caitlin Clark's quote-unquote Heisman winning possible performance. I think she's already clearly the rookie of the year. This kind of series right here is going to be what puts her in the conversation of, like, do we need to really start talking about her as an MVP candidate going into next season? Is that a real thing we need to start having the conversation about? This is a get me back game. And I think if there's any unique player to go up against Connecticut as an individual, Caitlin Clark might be the most intriguing player to see go up against this Connecticut defense.
I think so too. And you got to remember who are the leaders of this like Connecticut Sun team. We got DeWanna Bonner and Alyssa Thomas. These guys who have been like elder statesmen of the WNBA for like, the longest time, and they see this new and up and coming person. And even though they've created such a good like profile, such a good what's it called, good resume for the season, like the Connecticut Sun, people are going into this saying, they can win. They're like 1 game over 500. Like they have a chance to win, and it's like on the shoulders of Caitlin Clark, and especially over these last few weeks, you got to remember what she's done: break the WNBA assist record, most points in a season for a rookie. And then like she's averaging like 23, 24 points per game since they came back from the Olympics.
Yeah.
This is like some like next level. I mean, like if there's anything like better that Kane Clark can take away from the season, is that Olympic break saved her. Let's be completely honest.
True. TV, you made a really good analogy off camera that compared to the NBA, and I think people deserve to hear it because I think Caitlin Clark is kind of embodying a little something, and you made a really good point to me off pod.
Yeah. So basically, what I was saying was, you got to remember, like Caitlin Clark at the beginning of the season wasn't the Caitlin Clark we saw post Olympic break, right? Like she was great, but she was still like trying to find her feet in the WNBA, still trying to like find herself as the point guard of this team. Her and Angel Reese were neck and neck for a little bit. Do you remember how Chet Holmgren and Victor Wembanyama in the in the NBA, like probably up to like what, December, January, if I'm getting like my dates right, up until that point. But then something happened, and whether it was the Spurs that said, you know what, Wemby is a center, we shouldn't be playing this guy at the 4. That doesn't make any sense. Let's put this guy at center, and he averages like what, 3+ blocks per game ever since he got moved to center. Becomes like a borderline all-star from the center position to the point where this season they're like, is this guy already an all-NBA player in the NBA going into next year? Like, this is the type of jump we saw from Wemby when it came to the San Antonio Spurs. Taking it back to the Indiana Fever, Caitlin Clark was good. And there was a good chance that even if she was like on the same track as she was pre-Olympic, she still had a good chance to win the Rookie of the Year.
Yeah.
The minute she got back from the Olympics, this girl just started going like borderline top 5 in the WNBA level crazy. Yeah. Whether it was the assist games, whether it was her breaking the single game single game record in assists, all these records, 35 points the other day, just a career high. Caitlin Clark has arrived, and even earlier than expected. Same thing with Victor Wembanyama. People are like, is his slender frame going to work here? Is Caitlin Clark's college play going to translate to WNBA? Yeah. Yes, it does. It translates to the WNBA really well, especially at the right time. And Victor Wembanyama I was at the game where he had 10 blocks, a 10-block triple-double. There's just certain players, these generational players that just come into the league and they're just different, right away. And it feels like in a Caitlin Clark, Victor Wembanyama scenario, once the second half of the season or post Olympic break for Caitlin, it just clicked. Yeah. It just happened to click, and they're going on especially for Wemby and her, they were just going on generational runs at the end of the season.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where the Indiana has a real chance in the series. I think they have a real chance in the series because they have a game breaker. They have a game breaker at point guard. I think the biggest difference and the most intriguing aspect of it is the Connecticut Sun have a physical defense. We've seen the Connecticut Sun's physical defense rattle Caitlin in less hostile environments. Obviously, the postseason, there's a lot more on the line. Also, the Connecticut Sun have picked up Marina Mabry since then, a big-time three-point shooter for them. Big time three-point shooter. I mentioned Sophie Cunningham, who got a contract extension with the Phoenix Mercury. She's somebody who big-time three-point shooter for them. Marina Mabry as a three-point shooter, easily top 3, top 5 from distance in the league. Real game breaker for them. The ability to guard Caitlin Clark with Dejanay Carrington, Taisha Harris, Marina Mabry, and then offensively being able to score with DeWanna Bonner, with Alyssa Thomas, with Brianna Jones even. They have weapons. You mentioned the depth of this team at the very top of the section. The depth of this team is out of this world. That's one that paired with their defense is going to be the thing that carries them if they are really going to be a championship caliber squad this year. And it's been their calling card all year long. Yes. I will be interested to see how the Indiana Fever respond after building the kind of momentum they've built, like you mentioned, on this second half of the season. They saw Connecticut when Connecticut was trying to humble Caitlin, trying to give her welcome to the WNBA moment. Caitlin has seen her way around the block now. She's been in those tough environments. She's been in those spots of having to go win games. The question now is, can you do it on the biggest stage against the team that clearly has the most to say about what you do next?
100%.
Connecticut is going to be an interesting squad to watch to see how they respond to all the hype around Indiana going to the postseason.
Yeah, it's going to be definitely crazy. I'm gonna make my quick prediction. I'm gonna bring it back to like my other comparison. The difference between what the Spurs had in Victor Wembanyama and what this Indiana Fever team have with Clayton Clark is that they don't have one of the best backcourt mates in the league. Um, they don't have like that number 2 for Victor Wembanyama just yet. While for the Indiana Fever, Kelsey Mitchell has been absolutely killing it as well. Not getting enough like mention in this.
Mm-hmm.
I think Indiana I think they get the upset here.
Whoa.
I just think that you got to remember, right place, right time, and turning it on at the right time. They're finally clicking. They're all playing for each other right now. Aaliyah Boston, like you mentioned, is finally coming into her own as like a formidable center there. Obviously, it's going to be a tough matchup against DeWanna Bonner, but at the same time, I think the Indiana Fever, with this right momentum, I think they provide. I think they put the upset.
I'm gonna take Connecticut. Yeah, I was gonna take Connecticut. I'm gonna take Connecticut 2-1. Sounds so. It sounds like obviously you don't think they're gonna get. You don't think they're gonna get swept or anything.
It's gonna be a tough battle.
I think it's one of those where Connecticut is going to set the tone in game 1. Caitlin is going to respond, and game 3 is going to be do or die. And I just think that Connecticut is built for it. They have the right postseason players for it. And I think that if you wanted to put together a list of your top 5 closers in the WNBA right now, from a scoring perspective, DeWanna Bonner's making my list. DeWanna Bonner is making my list of top 5 players I want in the clutch in a game 3 with the chance to move on to the next round. And that's why I think that Connecticut Sun are going to get just strong enough a play from a player like that. And watch out for Dejanay Carrington as well, because she is going to be important as probably the player that's going to get the primary matchup on Caitlin, considering throughout the season, she has been the primary defender on Caitlin Clark throughout the year.
Yes.
Those 2 players are going to be very important. I think Dejanay is going to have herself a game on both sides of the floor, and I trust DeWanna Bonner more than anybody in this series to go get me a bucket, to go get me a handful of buckets in the closing parts of a big game. And that matters to me more than the fact that Caitlin Clark is generational. I think DeWanna Bonner being seasoned and being a player that I trust in big moments at this juncture just matters a lot more. 2-1 for Connecticut, 100%. But it's going to be a close 2-1, boy.
It's going to be a close 2-1, man. There's going to be a reason that why people are going to have those eyes to screen. Obviously, Caitlin Clark is just a enigma, like you mentioned before the pod, like in the WNBA. But the fact that they're just carrying on at the right time and they have a chance to take down, this seasoned Connecticut Sun team, it's definitely a story to watch out for, and I'm definitely going to be keeping my eye out on that matchup.
Yeah.
But Jay, we still haven't even talked about the defending WNBA champs yet.
Yeah, crazy.
And they're in a 4-5 matchup versus the Seattle Storm. Jay, before we even get to these playoff predictions,
okay,
we gotta talk about how great A'ja Wilson's been.
Got to.
We got
to.
Because
it's been a ridiculous year. Spell it out for them, TV, because I think they don't understand unless you put the stats next to it.
Bro, like, first player in WNBA history to get over 1,000 points. Remember, they play 40 games in a year.
Yeah.
And there's still 2 games left, but they play only 40 games in a year. And this girl in a 40-minute game is averaging 27 points per game, 12 rebounds, 52% from the field, 85% from the free throw line, true shooting at 60%, 2.5 blocks, how can you fathom the season that A'ja Wilson is having right now? And I've seen this argument. I know people might have taken this the wrong way, but the way I see it is if you take into account kind of the gap between number 1 and number 2 in terms of the MVP standings compared to other leagues of basketball around the world, can you potentially say that she's the best basketball player in terms of her gap between the number 1 and number 2? Because it's been ridiculous how well she's been playing all season long.
I don't know if I would necessarily go as far as saying she's unequivocally the best player in ball. I think A'ja Wilson has been dominant this year. I just also think this is a very unique year to have that conversation because you could also make the argument that if she weren't around for this kind of season, there are 3 or 4 legitimately strong number 1 kind of candidates that have played well throughout this year, including Nafisa Collier, who we spoke about earlier in the podcast, including Caitlin Clark, who we just finished talking about with the Indiana Fever, including Sabrina. Like, you can go, like, I think she has unequivocally been the best player in the league this year. We have to also remember that this is a team that in the early stage of the season was taking steps backwards. This was a team that people were actually worried about their semi-slow start. This was a team that, you remember, Asia was wearing white T-shirts to every game because she said we need to start putting some win streaks together. So she kind of needed to get some pixie dust around the squad to kind of get them back, you know, in good graces and back in the flow of the championship caliber team we know they are. This is a player who has been dominant as an individual, but their team has had ebbs and flows, as defending champions do, that has made the gap a little bit closer, because team success does matter when talking about a player being unequivocally dominant. And she has been unequivocally dominant as an individual talent, but in certain junctures of the season, it hasn't been enough to, in terms of all tides raise all ships, you know, that kind of thing. They're ranked, they're fourth in the WNBA in terms of record this year for a reason. It was a slow start, a struggle to the beginning of the year, Asia Wilson included, and they picked their pieces up and they've played good basketball since the break, as we've been kind of mentioning throughout the podcast with a handful of teams, and now they are where they are. But she's easily, like we said earlier, I think we said this off pod, and I think we definitely said at the beginning of this section, she's easily the MVP for the year. That part we're not having a debate about. That part we're not having a debate about.
Yeah, 100%. I just wanted to shout out Asia over there.
Definitely.
But in a 4-5 matchup, they're going up against a Seattle Storm team here who are definitely picking up themselves. We talk about players who are finally picking it up. Skylar Diggins-Smith, man. Yeah. Skylar Diggins-Smith is finally finding her own on this team, having a great season as well. I think like we were talking about like earlier on in the season where she was kind of like struggling in before. I mean, I hate that we keep talking about this, but pre-Olympics, pre-Olympics, like there was a struggle with Skylar Diggins-Smith, who was averaging like almost, I think, like only like 12, 13 points a game. Since then, she's been finding her way back, and her contributions alongside Jewel Lloyd have made the Seattle Storm team a very dangerous team. They're only one game behind the Las Vegas Aces at the end of the day. But Jay, I'm gonna throw it back over to you. Can the defending champions get got here?
Oh, they could definitely be got. Don't get me wrong. I love what Asia Wilson has been doing this year, and they have the makeup of a team that like you have to worry about. The defending champ, they're back-to-back defending champions for a reason.
I mean, star talent in general, it's hard to find like as much of a star-studded team as the freaking Aces. And
that's important to factor in. But TV, this Seattle Storm team outside of New York might be the second or third most talented team in terms of overall put together in the entire postseason. Jewel Lloyd, top scorer, 20-point per game scorer. Nneka Ogwumike, a very big pickup over the summer as well. Second leading scorer with nearly 17 points per game. Skylar Diggins-Smith, who you also mentioned, has been a real like drink stirrer so far throughout the year and has really picked up game, like you said, coming off the Olympic break. Magbagor has been, I think, consistently either number 1 or number 2 in terms of defensive rim protection stats, including blocks per game. Yeah. So she's going to be huge in terms of a one-on-one matchup against an Asia Wilson, for example. And I don't want to put too much gas into this because recency bias is a thing. But I think in a postseason setting, a player like Gabby Williams is going to be scary to keep a tab on, because we saw her breakout performances in the Olympics. And it's part of the reason why I think a lot of eyes were on her before she signed with Seattle, was because of the fact that her Olympic performances really kind of reintroduced us to her. She had been in the WNBA before. She moved away from the WNBA for monetary reasons, because playing overseas comes with a little bit more of that cha-ching, you know what I mean?
Yes, exactly.
But in terms of being able to play at the highest level, the Seattle Storm, in terms of pickups throughout the summer and this year, getting Ogwumike, Skylar Diggins-Smith, and then Gabby Williams coming off of that Olympic run. Again, Olympics, win or go home scenarios. WNBA, 3 games to move on to the next round is kind of that kind of environment, especially where you have multiple. We're talking about 4 perimeter players for Seattle that all can create their own shot, that can all guard at a pretty decent level, that can all be trusted to go get you a bucket in the final 2 minutes of a game to help you kind of break a game open. They're a team that against Las Vegas, this is not the type of team Las Vegas wanted to pull in the first round when you're talking about trying to defend their WNBA championship. This is not the kind of team they wanted to see in round 1.
Yeah, 100%. And they're currently on a 4-game winning streak as well. The Vegas are on a 3-game winning streak. Like, they are like closing out the season strong. Both of these teams are definitely closing out the season strong. Will star power remain? Because we've been talking about A'ja Wilson, but we got to remember Jackie Young and Kelsey Plum. In terms of like big threes in the WNBA, it doesn't get bigger than that. In terms of those 3. But the Seattle Storm team, like you mentioned, deeper bunch. They're still a top 4 defending team as well. Luckily for the Aces, they're number 1 in offense, a lot to do with A'ja Wilson, of course. It's going to be a tough battle. I think the Aces do win, but I think it's going to be a lot on the shoulders of like A'ja Wilson. I don't know if this is going to like, these extra minutes are going to maybe like hurt them a bit down the line, but I do think the Aces will like marginally pull this out. I do respect the Storm team. It's not going to be an easy matchup, but I do have the Aces still squeaking it out. They got they have championship, but that championship mentality is like massive, especially like being there so many times at this point.
I think that the Aces pull it out as well. I would worry about the fact that there are some very notable names on this Seattle Storm basketball team, though. I also think it is worth mentioning that, especially from scoring distribution standpoint, the Aces have gotten a bit top heavy. And compared to the spread out ability of the Seattle Storm and the fact that, like I mentioned beforehand, they have 4 players that all can create for themselves on the perimeter. In a 3-game series where you only need one, where you just need one person to get hot to really break a series open, they have 4 to 5 bites at the apple when you look at how they distribute the ball. I mentioned before, and there's 5 players for Seattle that are averaging double figures in scoring this year. The Aces, it's only 3, and after that third one, there's a significant drop from that point. That kind of lets you know that their 3 main scoring options are A'ja Wilson, Kelsey Plum, and Jackie Young. And after that, it's a lot of players who just kind of keep the hamster wheel churning. It'll be interesting against a team like the Seattle Storm that have a little bit more distribution of wealth, how that'll work out, because that distribution of wealth also shows on the defensive end. Ogumake is one of the top defensive players in the WNBA of steals. Mag McGore, like I mentioned beforehand, is one of the top defensive players in terms of rim protection. That's huge for a team that 2 of their best defenders now covers 2 of the Aces' top 3 players.
Right, yeah.
It gets really difficult when you start doing the math. So I got the Aces 2-1, but the math is mathing to make you feel like the Seattle Storm might be the team to watch to really pull off an upset in round 1. I would say of all the matchups we discussed today, even with Caitlin being who she is, I think the one team that actually should be on upset alert more than any team in the postseason right now are the defending champs, because I think the Seattle Storm are just that good.
100%. I was gonna say I was gonna repeat those same sentiments. I know like the Kayla Clark series might be like must watch in terms of especially like the way that she's been playing at the end of the season, but in terms of the most competitive matchup, it's these 2 over here.
Yeah,
it's gonna be very back and forth, and of course the MVP is gonna be involved in this, which is gonna be massive. But the Seattle Storm team, man, not one to mess with. Let us know down below in terms of our playoff predictions. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let us know, man. These are going to be some good series. I mean, apart from New York, Washington, I'm sorry to do this to you, buddy, but I mean, like, besides New York and Washington, I mean, there's a little argument for each of these. I mean, it's going to be a good first round. I will say that.
Yeah,
it's going to be a good first round, 100%. But Jay, this is our first episode back. We're gonna ease ourselves into this. We're not gonna have a quiz today, but we are gonna bring back the drafts.
Yeah.
And for today's draft, Jay, in the last episode we left them hanging. We did the August birthdays NBA draft, and that was a pretty crazy one because remember, like we found out with this website, you gotta go a couple pages to find out these really good ones, and Jay missed out on Anthony Edwards. But today, we're in the middle of September now. We are going to try to do the same sort of draft, but with September birthdays. Jay, how you feeling about this draft?
I feel better about this one, first of all, because we learned from our mistakes from last month. So the hope is that this time I construct the team a little bit better. And shout out to bornglorious.com. You guys go check it out. Some interesting names that pop up on the list. They are not ranked, by the way. They are not ranked.
Me and Jay, before this episode, we even did our due diligence. We've like scrolled. I'm telling you, when we tell you that we scrolled, we scrolled to make sure that we didn't miss out on anyone. But yeah, you know how these drafts go. Jay gets the first pick, I get the next two, and we run things serpentine style. Jay, who do you have as your number one overall pick for the September birthday?
All right, so for my number one overall pick, we got ourselves a birthday at the end of the month. My number one overall pick is going to be Kevin Durant for September 29th.
Very, very nice. Great matchup. Great pickup over there, Kevin Durant. Man, there's a lot of good options to go with here. It might be nice to just get a guy that could just defend your guy like almost immediately. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to draft Scottie Pippen.
All right. That makes sense.
So I'm going to go with Scottie. And then for my next pick, definitely some options we can go here. I might go with this guy just because I feel like, especially like, I mean, you guys don't know about this, but me and Jay had a conversation about like MVPs and stuff beforehand. And this guy got brought up because this man almost had probably one of the best seasons in NBA history and came third in MVP voting.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go with him in my next pick. I rarely do this, by the way. I'm going with two oldies here. Give me Elgin Baylor.
I can't blame you, man. He came up in conversation before the pod because we were talking about MVP for the WNBA, ironically. Yeah. But he's a guy that the minute I saw his name on the second page of this site, I said, ooh, I got to keep his name in mind because, I mean, he's going to be a dude that gets slept on if we wait too long. So I'm glad he got taken third overall. Ironic, third place is just a place for Elgin Baylor, man. It's kind of unfair how it works, but it just keeps going that way, man. It's tough out here.
This man got done dirty. Like what do we say? It was like Oscar Robertson and Wells finished above him. Like it's hard to compete with that.
Yeah. I don't know, man. That's one of those you just got to live with, I guess.
Yeah.
All right. So for my next two picks, let me go ahead and get Jimmy Butler.
Yeah, I knew out of all people, there's no way you're going to let Jimmy Butler slip.
Yeah, definitely not. The Bulls fan, come on now. We're talking about peak Jimmy too. Peak Jimmy could be any version you want him to be. But the guy that I'm going to go with as a peak version that I have to get, this might be controversial when you see the list of people that could be chosen from. I'm going with peak John Wall over a handful of these guys, though. Bumpy.
You know what, man? You know what? He was going to be my next pick. People forget, bro. People forget about prime John Wall.
Come on,
man. One of the best playmakers, one of the most exciting guards in the league, man. I love that pickup over there. All right, so John Wall off the board, Jimmy Butler off the board. Who to go with next? Well, I need to match up offensively. I got, Scottie Pippen on defensive end. I'm going to ask him to do a lot more point forward duties. But over here, my next pick, honestly, there's a chance this guy might play the one for me. I'm going to go with Donovan Mitchell. I don't mind if Scottie Pippen runs the offense, to be completely honest. So I'm going to go with Donovan Mitchell. And then, do I want more size? Do I want to get another guard? Do I want to go and get myself an enforcer? Ooh, that could be fun. I mean, there's still another MVP on the board. I don't know if any of us are going to choose him, but there's still another MVP over here. Mm-hmm. But for the modern game, I don't mind taking this guy like at this point Give me Rasheed Wallace, man.
Dang it. Oh, my. I was praying you were going to let him pass, man.
Like, I'm going to go with Rasheed Wallace, man. Especially thinking about current NBA standards. This man was like a stretch four before the time.
Yeah.
Got to go with Rasheed, man.
I can't be mad at that because that was definitely the guy I was looking at. The guy that I'm going to go with that is as close to proximity of what I wanted out of Rasheed Wallace, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put him at center too. This might be a little rough. We'll see how it goes, but I'm going to put him at center. Let me get Jaren Jackson Jr.
Okay. God, yeah, I like that pickup.
I think if we're talking about modern game, I think that's the closest equivalent. There's another guy that comes up as well that might come up. That might be an interesting pickup. But I think that in terms of modern game, I'm going to go with a guy who's already kind of played within the modern style, can do it on both ends, has won a DPOY. Like, there's a lot of things to like about Jaren Jackson. And for this team, he might fit best at center as a stretch big. And then the other player that I'm going to go with is we're going to be a big body squad. I'm going to put Jimmy Butler at the 2. We're going to move KD to the 4. Let me get a player that's not spoken about but was a bucket. Let me get Sidney Moncrief.
Whoa. I was ready to choose him next. Holy shit.
Yeah, let me get Sidney, man. We're going to have a big body squad today.
Well, he was one of the best defensive. I think he was like one of the only guards to win Defensive Player of the Year. So,
hey, man.
You
see the lineup. We're gonna talk about the defense in a minute. You saw I tried to talk about his buckets. We're gonna talk about the defense in a minute.
Yeah, this guy was freaking those Milwaukee Bucks days. He was a freaking defensive menace. That is a good pickup. I was like, there was like 3 other guys that I thought you were gonna go with. I'm gonna throw him off and I'm gonna go with Sidney Moncrief next. No, this man took Sidney, bro. Okay, all right, okay. Let's pivot. For my final pick here, I realistically I could just put Donovan Mitchell back at the 2 position. I am completely fine with that. I can go big body squad again. It would be super weird to put Scottie Pippen at the 2. I'm not going to do that. Lots of good options. One guy just retired recently on this list. Obviously I'm not gonna choose him. I don't know if Jay sees them or not, but
I ain't gonna say too much. But he's an interesting option. I'll put it that way.
I know he is. But you know what? I'm not gonna overthink this. I'm gonna put Donovan Mitchell in his natural position at the 2, and at the 1, man, one of the most disrespected superstars in the league today. Let me go with Trae Young.
That's the guy I was surprised didn't come off the board. So I'm glad he kind of did make it. There's a couple of guys, though, TV, that we could have pulled from that didn't even get a mention, though. You got a couple in the books? I got a couple.
Bro, this is a deep birthday.
Yeah. I mean, Kevin Love, Brandon Ingram, like Tyreek Evans. There's a couple of guys.
J.R. Smith over here as well.
Big Chauncey
Billups. That was, honestly, if I want to go with like fit, especially because Donovan Mitchell wasn't a great one. I mean, like Chauncey Billups made all defensive a couple times. DeJounte Murray on this list as well. CJ McCollum.
I almost grabbed DeJounte, but I realized DeJounte fits better at the 1. But I need John Wall at the 1, so that's kind of where that discrepancy came.
Yeah, I could have also go with Tim Hardaway Sr., man. Tim Hardaway is a freaking bucket back in the day.
Yeah.
Recently retired, bro. Joe Harris is on this list.
That was where the jokes were, man. But you want to know the legendary joke about these birthdays? There's a certain individual that falls within these birthdays that is the butt of many Hit Your Free Throws podcast jokes. TV, I wonder, do you know who I'm referring to? There's a certain individual that ends up making this list that gets a lot of Hit Your Free Throws, let's say hype. Maybe that's the word.
Hype?
I don't know if hype is the word necessarily, but
I'm trying to look at these names. Like, who are you? Low-key, I don't know which one. I can't find the guy that you're talking about.
Hey, man, let me say, I'm just going to put it this way, dude. Poor John Collins couldn't get a trade if we signed him to get traded. I'm just saying, man. God damn.
Not the John. Yo, bro, his career got over once freaking Anthony Edwards freaking destroyed this man's whole persona.
Yeah, man, got put on a t-shirt, literally and figuratively. That is insane work, man. But hey, it is what it is.
Yo, bro, he got $100 million contract. Better than us, bro. Better than us.
Facts.
100%. But yeah, that's our September birthday draft. Jay, go through your lineup of the best players from that have September birthdays.
Yeah, man. So my September birthdays basketball squad is going to be made up of John Wall at the 1, Jimmy Butler at the 2, Sidney Moncrief at the 3. We're going to slide Kevin Durant down to the 4, and then at the 5 is Jaren Jackson Jr.
Bro, when I tell you I have like a squad for like the modern day, Jesus, man, that is a good squad over there. Okay, for my September birthday squad, we got Trae Young at the 1, Donovan Mitchell at the 2, Scottie Pippen running the 3, Elgin Baylor at the 4, and we got Mr. Baldo Lie himself, Rasheed Wallace, man. How you feel about your team?
This is a good matchup. TV, we gotta find a way to start putting these 5v5s in 2K, man. This is crazy.
Crazy stuff, man. Yeah, super good draft again. We're gonna try to start doing these like once a month. So once we head into October and all of them, we're gonna start trying to do more of these drafts. But let me know what you guys think of this draft, and if you have any suggestions, leave them down below. Jay, we have reached another end of a fantastic episode. Thank you guys for watching. What do you have to tell these beautiful people before we sign out?
Long time no see. I said it at the beginning of the episode, and I gotta say it, and I'm so glad to be back with the podcast after running into my little injury that kind of put me sidelined for a while. It just feels good to be able to be back in front of a mic, be back in front of a camera, be back talking basketball with my guy TV. And we have already started to look forward to all of the other concepts that we want to get into, talking about this upcoming this upcoming WNBA playoffs, as well as the NBA season that's only a couple of weeks away at this point. So yeah, I mean, strap in because we are really locked in. And like I said, I'm just glad to be back on the pod, dude. Basketball is in full effect.
Yeah, 100%, man. Look, obviously you've seen how long these episodes can go. We've seen how short these episodes can go. We want to just get our feet back in it, get back into the pod game, and then afterwards, these episodes are coming out. We got the season previews, we got WNBA playoff talk, all playoff songs. So be on the lookout for that. And man, we have some great episodes lined up for you. So make sure that you're tuned into the Hit Your Free Throws pod for the remainder of these WNBA playoffs and throughout the entire NBA season, man. You already know what's up. It's going to be an awesome season coming up. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. Remember to check out our individual pages. Those can be found down below. The Routine Jumper is going to start very soon, so be on the lookout for that. And yeah, YouTube, podcast networks, all of that. Show support to the Hit Your Free Throws pod. We appreciate all of it. It's been an awesome episode. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you're having a fantastic day. This is TV. This is Jay. We're signing out. Peace.